here's Brody Brazil.
Okay, you're here. You've clicked on my Sharks mid-season review. I really appreciate that, especially because this is not going to be an easy video to do. You know, I was trying to come up with a real-life analogy to how this Sharks season is going so far through 41 games, and the best example I could come up with is actually kind of personal. It's like somebody who's trying to get back into better shape again, and they're eating the right way, and they're working out more, and they're trying to do all the right things to get just a little bit more healthy, but nobody's noticed it yet. And that's kind of like the Sharks. They've been making a lot of the right moves behind the scenes, some of it the dirty work, so to speak, some of it just not noticeable yet at the NHL level. If they stick with it and they continue doing things the right way, they're guaranteed to get back to essentially where they want to be. Same thing with any human who's, again, trying to get back into better shape. You're just not going to instantly notice it yet, but you really do have to continue to play the long game. Obviously, the NHL team this season is having it rough through 41 games. Kaapo Kähkönen's face last night in Game 41, I thought says it all. When our cameras caught him on the bench and the team was down 7-1, he'd already been pulled in the game and he was doing that. Like, I felt that right there. We all felt that right there. And honestly, Kähkönen individually has been having a really good season. And it's the product of two sustained streaks, the 11-game skid to start off the schedule, and currently the 12-game losing streak that the Sharks are on halfway through the season with this road trip. So I feel that right there. A lot of people did. When they saw it on the broadcast, it was instantly relatable. This is a team right now that is 9-29-3, and when you pan out the 21 points times 2, I mean, on pace for a 42-point season is quite rough. It's not going to be the worst Sharks season in franchise history. I mean, that's definitely going to stick with the 92-93 team for quite some time. They played 83 games back in the day, but still 11-71-2. And it's weird because that was the team's second year of existence. They were better than that in year 1. They regressed in year 2. Hey, they actually made the playoffs in year 3, their first year in San Jose. This was the last Cow Palace year, 92-93. But right now, obviously, last in the NHL standings, 32nd overall. They've got a -90 goal differential. They are far and away the worst goal differential team in the NHL. 6 wins at home, 3 wins on the road. And yeah, when you think about 23 losses of their 41 total games, 23 losses in sequence, meaning that 11 were in a row and currently 12 are in a row, it's hard to take those spans. Like if you just segmented the losses out differently, lose 4, win 1, lose 5, win 2, lose 4, it would just feel a lot different than being in these sustained skids. I keep choosing that combination of words. What a tongue twister. But you understand that's really what it is. It's hard to escape physically and mentally out of these losing stretches. So yeah, that's what the numbers say. Here's what the numbers really spell out. If you want to talk about probably thing number 1, and I think I've got 5 total points here, they're in no particular order, but this is the one that stands out. The Sharks just struggle to score goals this season. Again, last night, a 1-goal performance. That seems to be, and I say their magic number, unfortunately, 16 times this year. They've scored 1 goal in a game. 6 times they've been shut out. 7 times they've got to 2 goals. So if you do the simple math here, in 29 of their 41 games so far, the Sharks have been held to 2 or fewer, right? And that's something we've been talking about for years on television. You want to hold your opponent to 2 or fewer goals, and that will optimally give you a really good chance to win the game if you just score on average 2 or 3 or 4. But for the Sharks to be scoring 2 or fewer, a high majority of their games, yeah, I mean, 3 goals 4 times, 4 goals 3 times. They got to 5 and 6, 5 total times. But on most nights, it's getting shut out or typically scoring 1 or sometimes scoring 2. But that's it. And if you're looking for reasons why, I mean, the Sharks just are not that dangerous with the puck. They don't draw a lot of penalties. They don't force other teams to take penalties. Their power play itself is not very exceptional. Odd man chances, high danger scoring chances. When the Sharks score goals, it feels like it's usually a point shot that's redirected out front, or there's a second chance and a rebound opportunity. But you don't see a lot of skillful Sharks goals, players willing the puck in the back of the net. Typically, it's a team effort, and it's once they're established in the offensive zone. They just don't get a lot of scoring opportunities. Heck, it relates primarily to just puck possession. If there was a clock that was on the screen the entire time, if we didn't even show the actual score of the game, if it was just a timer of who has the puck for more time, one team versus the other, it would always generally favor the other team, and especially the other team having the puck in their offensive zone. It feels like the Sharks do so much defending this year, which obviously limits them in scoring chances and even shot chances this year. If you look at shots by period for Team Teal, there's so many nights where it's 5 shots in the first, 6 shots in the second, maybe 8 in the third. They're not even cracking double-digit shot totals period after period. And that's another thing, too, the inability to put together 3-period games. Some nights, and it's a little bit deceiving, and I think that's one of my points here, the lack of consistency. Oh, there it is. On some nights, they'll play 1 good period or even 2 good periods, but that 3rd period is so rough that it costs them the game. And I think that's one way to look at it. Here's another way to look at the lack of consistency. They've definitely underperformed during these losing skids. The first 11 games and the most recent dozen games, there have been chances and opportunities for them to get away from losing. And they just haven't done it for one reason or another. They've had some leads. They've blown some leads. They've had chances to get back in games and couldn't do it. But I think it's safe to say they're not a team that really should be losing 11 and 12 games. It's happening, and I'm not blaming anybody individually for it happening. It's a team effort. But on paper, they are technically a team, I think, that's better than that. So they've underperformed there. But then I think what caught everybody off guard is how they overperformed for that stretch at the end of November and the beginning of December when they won 6 of 9 games, and that road trip included a couple comeback performances. So maybe that's just the evening out of a hockey season, and across, 82 total games, maybe it's going to be a totally different picture by the end of this. But I think they've just seen a matter of extremes, having it so rough, then so good, and during that stretch, they were scoring a ton of goals back then. But now they've kind of reverted to the team that started off this season. They also had those 2 back-to-back games. Was it Pittsburgh and Vancouver back-to-back when they allowed 10 goals in each of the games? Unheard of, and obviously a moment that really had the team looking at itself in the mirror. And I still think what's crazy about all of this, it's still a Sharks group that can surprise most teams and beat them on any given night. I don't want to say all teams. There are some star-studded opponents, which on paper the matchup's rough, and when they take the ice, it plays out that way. But there are a lot of teams, really good teams, that the Sharks can line up against and go beat still. And that's kind of the nature of the NHL and the parity that exists with the hard salary cap and all that stuff. But again, it's still a Sharks team that you really can't put your finger on all the time precisely. And some nights they're going to lose when they're the underdog, but other nights they're going to beat the team that they're the underdog to. So they can definitely still surprise teams out there. I think right now they have one of the best goalie tandems in Kaapo Kähkönen and Mackenzie Blackwood, maybe since the Nabby, Kipper, and Toskala era, right? Remember when they had 3 and they had to get down to 2, but that was kind of a heyday of Sharks goaltending. Now, since then, they've had good goalies in spurts, and obviously Nabby was around for a while. Antti Niemi had his run. Martin Jones had his run. But I think right now with Blackwood and Kähkönen, you kind of have to separate them from the rest of the team and team defense and lack of scoring and all the other things. Goalies right now are not the Sharks' big problem. And I think they have multiple big issues, scoring being primarily the most abstract one, but goalies are not the Sharks' problem this season. I think Kaapo Kähkönen is playing his best season as a Shark so far, and I think Mackenzie Blackwood has been a great addition to this team this season. Where would they be without those two, quite honestly? In the wins they have, I think largely it's because of the goaltending that's kept them in those games. And I'll also say it like this, and I'll kind of single out Blackwood and say, what about the hypothetical that imagine Mackenzie Blackwood on the Sharks 5 or 6 years ago, 2016, 17, 18, like the way he plays and some of the high danger saves that he makes and the consistency that he shows, put him on one of the great Sharks teams of yesteryear. Oh man, that would have been phenomenal. And no disrespect to any of the prior netminders, but I think that's the highest compliment I could give Mackenzie Blackwood, is that he's great here and now when the team needs him and they're struggling. But I think he, surrounded by a really good Sharks team in front of him, would have been monstrous. So again, I think those two goalies are playing so well that unfortunately they're going to receive the highest compliment you can give. Each one of them, or maybe both of them, might be in trade talks when that comes around in March? Like, seriously, other teams around the league are going to look at San Jose's goaltending. Despite what the record says and despite what some of their individual stats say, Blackwood and Kähkönen have been great, and they're getting noticed this year. But the Sharks are really getting no help from their penalty kill. And this is a team last year that got some points and stayed close in games. In fact, the Sharks had 16 overtime losses last year, which I don't know if I'm bragging about that, but it just goes to show you there were a lot of close games that they gained points in. They got single points in those games because they just kept it close. And they took it to overtime. They took it past regulation. And one of the things that keeps games close is the penalty kill. And a lot of nights, the Sharks are giving up power play goals, 1 or 2, to each of their opponents. The penalty kill last season and the prior seasons to that, it kept them in a lot of games, and it kept the scores closer in a lot of games when they were trailing. Last season, the Sharks ended up 7th in the NHL at 82.4% on the PK. And I think the year before that, they might have even been top 5. Even in the struggling years, for whatever reason, the Sharks' penalty kill was really good. Well, this year, it's 30th in the NHL at 72.6%. So you've already got a team that is struggling 5-on-5. They're taking penalties. They're going on the kill. They can't execute on the PK like they used to, and now it's costing them in games. It's a rarity that there are nights where the Sharks are perfect on the PK. They take penalties almost every game, obviously, but it's rare that they are perfect when shorthanded on those nights. So the penalty kill, I don't want to say a smaller part of the game, and their power play hasn't been great either if you want to look at special teams, but I know this is kind of a more smaller focus area of the game. Special teams important, but this is definitely a singular area that I think is affecting the bigger picture of their results. Okay, there have been some individual stories. I know this is kind of a team review, but I do want to single out some individuals. I think William Eklund and what we've seen from number 72 this year is flat-out confidence. Patience with the puck, the ability to make plays behind the cage. It's not just the goals he's scored, it's some of the assists, the primary assists he's had, some of the playmaking that he's attempted and tried, and I just see some real strides with William Eklund. We saw him in short bursts each of the last few seasons. This is going to be the big one, like the first full season, start to finish, and I think William Eklund, I just want him to have an equal second half, hopefully a better second half, but at the very least, an equal first half to second half. I think that would say a lot about his maturation process and development as a player. Mikael Granlund. And no, I'm not saying Finnish up there because he's from Finland. I'm saying this is one of the Sharks players that has actually shown some finish this year, both in setting up teammates, but also in scoring lately. And Mikael got off to kind of a slow start. He's been around the league for a while. We've known about him. We've heard his name plenty of times, but Randy and Drew, I think, said this, or maybe Randy and Hetty said it on a recent broadcast, that watching Mikael Granlund this season on an every night basis, it's the first time that you get to respect a player more just by watching him that much more. Again, we heard his reputation, we heard his name before, we knew about him, we could plainly see the stats, but it's the eye test with Mikael Granlund that I think has made him an even more impressive player the more he sinks in here in San Jose. For Tomas Hertl, I think this season has been all about leadership, and by the way, congratulations to him on being named to his second All-Star team. But look, when you have Logan Couture, the captain, who gets injured in training for this season, he's out of training camp, he's out of the entire first half, and it does look like his return is right around the corner, and you have a team going through a stretch, an unprecedented stretch like they have, who's your leader? It's a guy like Tomas Hertl, who Logan, by the way, addressed this, I think last week in an interview with Tara Sloan on our broadcast, in saying that here's a guy in Tomas Hertl who we all watched come to San Jose. He knew only a little bit of English, and he was a little comfortable then, but he's a lot more comfortable now in his own skin and his development as a hockey player. And now he's one of the team leaders. And it's, in a way, I mean, you don't want him to be in this circumstance of a team that's rebuilding and having one of its worst seasons ever, but he has definitely stepped forward in a leadership role, and his stats are okay. They're coming around. Again, the entire team stats are well behind where they want, but he put a lot of work in this summer in terms of fitness and getting in better physical shape. It didn't exactly pan out at the beginning, but I think it's starting to really hit a corner, and let's see what he does in the second half. Let's see what he does post All-Star break. I mentioned Kaapo Kähkönen, and I feel guilty now for excluding Mackenzie Blackwood, but both of those goalies have been solid for the Sharks this season. Again, on an any-night basis, and let's be honest, sometimes when there's a tandem of goalies and you hear that the other one is starting, you go, all right, tonight's one of those nights. It's going to be a little bit different. But right now with the Sharks, there is no letdown no matter who is and who's not starting on a night-to-night basis. And I understand that, usually the Sharks are the underdogs in all these games, but I'm just saying in terms of giving your team a chance to win, both of those guys have been phenomenal. I put Couture, Sturm, and Vlasic's names here separately just because they're kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum of maybe praise that these players got. And it's not a knock against Logan. He's been injured. I feel really bad for him. And hearing the interview where he talked about not ever knowing if he'd come back to play in the NHL again. This current injury was apparently so bad and so hard to figure out and so hard to overcome that he wasn't sure about anything. And that's a really rough spot mentally for a competitor like Logan to be, a team captain like Logan to be in, especially while his team is going through a season like this. Now, look, I've already made a video here on this channel. You should check it out about the potential of the Sharks trading Logan Couture. I'll summarize what I said in that video right here, right now. It's professional courtesy. If the team can make a deal that Logan would be agreeable to, or if Logan even wants to go down that road and the team thinks it could bring him and the team value, then sure, they can all move forward with it. If he doesn't want to go, and obviously he's got it's a modified no trade clause or modified no move clause, he's got some say in it, but what I'm saying is they should have that conversation. What do you want to do? And then the team can move forward with what the player wants to do. If it can benefit him at almost 35 years old, he's only going to have a couple more really good cracks at winning a Stanley Cup. He also has 3 more years, I think, on his contract after this season. So that's a tricky part of it. But again, I hate to see it happen too. Selfishly, I really do. But for him, and if it gives him the chance, then I think the next couple weeks are really important in terms of showcasing his health and where he's at right now this season. Nico Sturm has been another one, injured for quite some time. One of the team leaders on the Sharks, one of the players from last year that I really wanted to see more and more of this year. That obviously hasn't been able to be the case. And then Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who's been healthy scratched on a high handful of occasions in recent weeks and months. He started out this season as an every-night player, and then, around the maybe 25-game mark, we've seen him in the press box, in and out, mostly out versus in on a pretty regular basis. And again, that's the frustrating part. Vlasic, one of your higher-paid players, one of your veteran players, and the Sharks and David Quinn are putting 6 other defensemen in front of him on a pretty regular basis. So that's been a frustration factor, I'm sure, for Vlasic, but also for the Sharks as a team as they just try and move forward. So once again, it's not going to be the worst Sharks season ever. I know it feels like that at times, but let me just go back to my analogy. I really think this one is applicable. It's like somebody who's trying to get back in it, and it doesn't just happen overnight. And I realize, look at the LA Kings and look at the Anaheim Ducks. They're already ahead of the Sharks. Yeah, but they started ahead of the Sharks in their rebuild process. San Jose was a little bit later behind the curve. So it's not to say that things aren't working. They're just behind where everybody else is at. And slow and steady wins the race. Yeah, sure. You just have to make sure if you're the Sharks that you continue doing things the right way, developing your young players, trying to pick the best draft choices you can. I mean, look, at this point, the Sharks are 32nd in the league. They should have among the best odds to pick first or second. And I know there's no Connor Bedard out there this year, and Unfortunately for Connor, he's not even playing right now for the next 2 months, but Macklin Celebrini's out there. Some others are out there. The Sharks are coming off a last year where they also had 2 first-round draft picks. So they've got to make that count, but they've also got to understand that this isn't instantly going to turn around, but eventually it can if you continue to do the right things and approach things from the right way. You made it here to the end of the video. You know I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.